Good evening. Welcome again to Women to Women. I'm Carol Paz, your hostess, and we're back again with Sheriff Furlong. This is part 2, and we're going to get to those guests that we have on and to Sheriff's observations on the questions. But first, we'd like to thank the Carson Nugget and Star Anderson for sponsoring these 2 programs. The Carson always says we're there for you, and they have been for us. So we thank you, Miss Anderson. We'd also like to have an invitation to you to watch us on carsonnow.org, where the latest Carson City news is constantly on 24/7. So let's turn to our guest. Sheriff, welcome again.
Hello there. Nice to be here. Thank you so much.
It's our pleasure. You're setting a very high standard for any possibility of another man coming on this program, okay? You're going to have to be hard shoes to fill. You know, we were talking with Sheriff Furlong last week about his background in the law enforcement education, his investigative services, and he kind of let us in that as a little boy of 6-year-old, he had a heart that he had a dream that was put into that heart, not just from family members, but from just the general observation of the public toward law enforcement officers. And I know that Sheriff Furlong, there are many moments as we look back on our careers, and you're still in a very active career as sheriff here in Carson City. But there are those moments that help us grow, and help us remember not only who but what advanced us further in your case as sheriff. Can you remember a couple of incidents, perhaps when you were younger, in the same position, or even in law enforcement as you began it, that made a difference as to who you are today as sheriff?
You know, there's been quite a few that I reflect back on, where that moment in time really meant a lot in the long run of what I do here as the sheriff.
Can you share one of those episodes with us?
You know, one of them was a recognition, and I dare say this is a very honest show, that we all carry prejudices.
Yes.
We all do.
We do.
And that if we don't acknowledge that, then they can lead us down the wrong road.
Correct.
And things aren't always as they are perceived. And victims can be victims regardless of your thoughts. And that really set a character trait in me. Follow the evidence. Follow the evidence. We talk about our gut feelings, or we talk about our learned knowledge, but follow the evidence, because sometimes you can be carried astray by things that you think that might prejudice you one way or the other. And so I learned that very, very early on.
I think we have a bottom line. Maybe I'm missing the point here. I don't think so, but don't judge a book by its cover.
You've got it exactly right.
Yes, and any of us who are working with the public, that are working with people, and most of us at some time, just in families, we work with one another. Sometimes there's a whole lot more than what meets the eye at that moment. Thank you, thank you. Well, we have guests that are lined up, and they have questions for you. So would our first guest please come forward? Okay, introduce yourself, please.
Hi.
Hi, Carol.
Hi.
I'm Liz Andrews Booth. I'm president of the Carson City Downtown Business Association and owner of Liz's Biz. And I have a question for you. What is your stand on women in combat or front lines of law enforcement?
I appreciate that question, because I have them on both sides. Female officers that are employed here at the Sheriff's Department, as well as spent my 20 years in the military service. And you know what? There's not much of a difference between what we do in law enforcement and the violence that we see or try to stop on a daily basis versus what goes on out there in the horrible end of the world with the military. Folks have talents, and they can exercise them. And if they are truly capable of doing fulfilling those roles, whether it be in law enforcement or in the military, then certainly I see that they are in essence equal. Because you're a male or because you're a female, that doesn't mean that you have restrictions.
I agree.
I agree also.
It is the person. And that's always where we have to concentrate on the person's capabilities. We talk about the feminine, small-framed person, be it a male or a female, and that person can't pick up this 60-pound log and move it. Well, then the person cannot do that. But you notice I said the person, not the male or the
Truly.
female. And so it's as we've talked about in the prior shows, it's a discussion about can you produce the end result.
Yes, and
Right, exactly.
And I think what the sheriff is also saying, that whether we're male or female, we need to admit, be honest with ourselves as, can I do that? Am I gifted in that area or not? I may be able to pilot a helicopter. I may be able to pilot an F-16. But on the other hand, I may not be able to go out and lug 3 or 4 of my best buddies off the battlefield. I've got to understand where my gifts are and to share them.
Yes.
And we need to share our gifts with one another, regardless of gender.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you so much. I think that's always, there's been a tension, and probably there'll continue to be a tension between males and females until we get down to listen. Here is this job description. And if you are well trained, if you are well educated in this, or if you meet the requirements here, you're on board. We'll interview you.
Yeah, and one of the key issues, and we see this as we talked in the last episode about kids and adults, it's that self-esteem, that confidence in self that I can do the job. And if I have that confidence, then very often I can train myself, equip myself, or prepare myself to do those things that stretch me a little bit beyond my comfort zone.
Teach me, work with me, train me. I'm willing. Next guest, please. Welcome. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, my name is Yara, and I am the president of the United Latino Community here in Carson City. Mr. Furlong, my question is, as a parent, after seeing everything that's happened in our world, with the schools, with the violence, IHOP, especially in our community, we've seen tragic events happening. How do you work with the school districts? How close are you with them in regards to protecting our children in the schools in our community? Make me feel safer. I understand that we can only prevent so much, but I trust my hands. I trust you guys. How do you tell us something to know that when I go to work, there's people watching?
I want to answer your question straightforward. We stay in absolute direct contact with our school districts here in Carson City, very, very closely. Mr. Stokes, the school superintendent, and I frequently have conversations. But the real issue with her question is this. I don't always discuss it with the public because there are boundaries about information. Very often one of the most common questions that is directly related to yours is, are you prepared for a school issue? Okay. And
That issue may be
and how
violence.
do you practice? And how are you going to safeguard our children? Well,
really hard
we don't
question.
run out to the press and publicize our exercises. We don't display them to the children very often. We don't display it to the community because we consider those types of things operational issues.
In-house.
And so I really want to spell out that we are constantly training and communicating with the school district. I have 2 officers that are assigned to the schools, one assigned at the elementary level and one assigned at the middle school, high school level. And in fact, our elementary officer, Miss Davis, who you've had on the show, is actually bleeding over into the middle schools as well, because as I said before, we think that the middle school is a particularly important environment for us. So yes, we continually train, equip, and communicate with the school district on a regular basis.
I think you've shown us, like I said, unfortunately, the violence that we've faced in our community, we've seen your response, your people response, the agency in itself, and you guys have made us very proud.
Well, thank you.
But as a parent, I can't wonder,
Well, as a parent,
your
we cannot
cooperation.
accept anything short of our children coming home safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yarasa. Thank you. And you hit on another point there. Children, students, regardless of the level that they're at, high school, middle school, or elementary, even preschool, just have a simple trust and abiding faith that the adults are prepared to protect them.
Yes.
And I think the responsibility of teachers and the responsibility of administrators, school boards, and we as parents, we really need to be in full contact with one another. And I agree, operational basics cannot be shared world, to the whole community, because the element of surprise, the element of planning, etc., has to lie with you. But it's very reassuring to know, as a grandparent, and Yaroseth as a parent, that you have that constant communication.
We are constantly in communication.
Because the public trust
And
rests in you.
I have to tell you, in our exchanges with the schools, the individual schools are so engaged with us. It's just amazing.
That's good
They're
to hear.
very, very supportive.
Okay. Would our next guest please come forward? Thank you for being with us tonight.
Good evening, Carol and Sheriff Furlong. I'm Joetta Brown, the Western Regional Director for the Alliance for Retired Americans. My question is about elder abuse. Is there a high incident in Carson City, and how do you respond to that?
Elder abuse.
Elder abuse. Certainly a topic with the District Attorney's Office and the Sheriff's Office as well. I would suggest to you that any incidence is high incidence. Is that a fair statement to
That's a
say?
very fair statement. Yes.
Yes, we see it very, very often to varying levels of people taking advantage of our senior population, who very often are the ones who are giving the most. They have reached a point in their lives where they tend to reach out and they take care of one another. They allow someone to help them, and in return, sometimes they're abused. Both physically and mentally. And so we, in the last, it's been about 4 years now, we've brought on a elder abuse program in and of itself in here to the Sheriff's Department. Our District Attorney, Neil Rombardo, has declared that elder abuse is a priority issue to his office, and that he will prosecute those cases that come before him. And in fact, we have reached out to one of the model agencies in the United States, that being out of San Diego, for our training on how to investigate and then follow through with a prosecution for elder abuse.
Right. Unfortunately, it is nationwide.
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
Thank you, Joetta. Sheriff Furlong, in regards to Joetta's question, we are a culture that seems to be stepping back as families toward the protection of our elders. And you have been in other cultures, I have been in other cultures, where the well-being of that grandparent or great-grandparent or uncle or aunt is highly esteemed. It's an honor to take care of them, to provide for them. It's a real privilege. What's happened here, do you think? Just very briefly, I know we have to...
Very, very briefly, I can just tell you from my point of view, traveling across the country, back east, it is very common that the grandparents are very heavily engaged in raising the children. And I see that cultural activity spreading out to the west a lot more. And grandparents are engaged more now out in the west than I would say that they were 30 and 40 years ago.
Okay, and so that's a plus, absolutely
That's
a plus.
an absolute plus.
A return to roots, so to speak, the roots that helped raise us, helped guide us. So we're looking forward to the second half of this program with you. Don't go away. We'll be right back with Sheriff Furlong.
Pets of the Homeless is a nonprofit, all-volunteer organization that provides pet food and veterinary care to the homeless and less fortunate in local communities.
With donations from the public, we're able to provide homeless shelters with crates, bowls, cleaning materials, so that homeless with pets can come into homeless shelters and get the services that they need to get out of homelessness.
How was school today?
Cool, we learned what to do in case there's an emergency.
Oh, will you show me?
If there is an earthquake, then you get under your desk, duck, cover, and hold. And when the shaking stops,
we evacuate the school just like a fire drill.
I'm glad you both know what to do in case of an emergency, but I'd still be worried.
Check the phone, radio, or TV, and they'll tell you what to do.
Make a plan.
Assemble a kit.
Stay informed.
And be ready.
Welcome back to the second half of Women to Women. We're with Sheriff Furlong, who is answering a lot of questions from the public here in Carson City. So we thank you for returning with us. We'd also like to recognize that the support and the backing for these two programs, Part 1 and Part 2, has been provided by the Carson Nugget. Thank you to Star Anderson, General Manager. So their motto has always been, we're here for you, and we appreciate that they have come through for us in such a big way. All right, let's return to Sheriff Furlong and our guest. Would you please introduce yourself and your question?
Well, hello. Thank you so much for this opportunity tonight. My name is Connie Friend. I am lead pastor at Capital Christian Center here in Carson City. And my question is regarding so much of what we've been talking about already tonight. It seems that people in positions of authority, specifically law enforcement, don't receive the amount of honor and respect that they did when I was growing up. And I just wondered, from your standpoint, what is something that we can do as people of the general public that could help possibly build the morale of your team and your officers?
I appreciate the question. I do differ a little bit.
Okay.
Growing up in a law enforcement family as I did, I've explained that before, and pursuing a career, even though I was in the military, yes, I was in the military, but I was in a law enforcement role in the military. I've actually seen us grow towards a more positive image.
Great.
And I have to say that I think a lot of good things happened in the 60s along with all of the bad.
Okay. Help us understand what you mean by that.
Throughout the 60s and into the 70s, one of the most horrifying things that we went through was the Vietnam War.
Yes.
And we saw the way that our soldiers were treated in return coming home. Well, that type of behavior was also emulated on the streets throughout our country. And we saw that in the riots and the revolution, if you will. Well, following that, I think it allowed us to look at ourselves as a country and recognize those people for what they've done for our country.
Meaning the veterans.
The veterans. And the officers and the public safety representatives, the firemen and the paramedics, everybody who is out there every day seeing to your life and to raise it.
Yes.
And I think we learned a lot of things coming out of Vietnam. One of them was how horrible we can look when we look in the mirror sometimes.
Yes.
So
True.
I see us as having made great strides in the last 30 or 40 years. And I will offer you this, because it does strike to my character, it really deep down in me. It's my responsibility to raise the morale by communicating with the public what are our needs, how you can help, and how I can help. And I think that the more we communicate as a society, the better the better our quality of life is. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, and I think in terms of Connie's question, we as the public, we as parents, we as teachers, we really need, whenever possible, to give our children that sense of history that we have come through.
Yes.
Because the civil rights movement of the South, during the 1960s and into the 70s, so changed and brought us as a nation face to face with ourselves in the mirror. And what is right for one citizen has to be right, in terms of fairness for all of us. And I think that's sometimes an area that we forget to share with our children, is what are all the areas in our country where men and women are serving with their lives to protect us. As a person who came out of 9/11, New York City, I was astounded at the response of the firemen, the policemen, the paramedics, and to this day, they are tremendous heroes. Tremendous heroes.
What is the saying? He who ignores history is doomed to repeat it?
Yes. So thank you very much for
Very,
your
very
question.
good.
Very
Thank
much.
you.
Okay.
Yes, I think we've made a lot of progress.
Oh, absolutely. And I think we're remiss if we don't remind and help each other to remember that.
absolutely.
To remember that. Yes, welcome. Your name, please?
Good evening again. It's Carol Howell. I'm a resident of Carson City. And I'd like to know how you feel about gun control with the tragedies that have happened both here and across the United States in the current political climate. of gun control and people rushing out and buying guns, every bullet, every magazine that they can get their hands on, and the increased CCW permits. How do you as a sheriff feel about the public arming themselves to this degree?
You know, it's interesting because that's the national debate today. All the way from your state legislatures to your federal government, it's being talked about within your community governments and within the communities themselves. You know, weapons are a means of some very, very horrific things, and we've witnessed that here in Carson City.
Yes, we did.
And so I tell folks, if you want to see a weapon that should be banned, I can show it to you, because it killed people in this town, and it has no legitimate purposes, most importantly, in the hands of the person who possessed it. I believe very strongly that the mental health condition of this country needs to be addressed. And as I've said to many, many folks, there are three things that we need to work on: affordability, accessibility, and trust in the mental health area. We can't take guns away from our country.
I don't think so.
We were raised on it.
Yes.
And
It's
so
a part
it's
of who
not
we are.
going to happen. It's just plain not going to happen. But yes, we do have controls here in the United States about guns, and we need to start filling in some of these cracks in the surface. I refer to them as feel-good laws. Laws that are on the books that do no good for law enforcement to enforce. And we've seen this repeatedly over and over again. We talk about the CCWs. There is a huge influx today, even in this organization, of concealed weapons permit applications being received. And yet there are questions on that are in accordance with our Nevada statutes that I have no means to verify. Are you being treated by mental health? It's the only response, or the only way to check it, is what did you answer? There is no means. So I think that we do need to elevate the trust by allowing a better system of actually following through with those items that are currently in the laws. I do believe in universal background checks. I don't believe that you as a dealership should be differentiated from you as an individual. If you're required to perform the background checks, then so should you. That's what I believe. So in response to your question, I believe we have the laws, but in so many cases, we don't have the processes or the procedures down to make those laws effective. And that needs to be addressed. And second to that is we need to address mental health in the United States. We need to address it, and it is a desperate need.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
Thank you.
And I think it initiates a very important conversation that's going to be, our nation needs to have.
It absolutely
needs to
does.
have.
I have looked so much at some of these tragedies and attended so many conferences and summits on them all the way across this country. And in all of these cases, these are tragedies that could have been prevented.
Averted. Yes, thank you. Our next guest, please. Your name?
Good evening. My name is Marta Coscarat, co-owner with my husband of Pia Basket Deli. My question is, what safety measures should business owners take when opening and closing their business?
It's a very good question.
Yes, it is. Very practical.
We're talking about what to do when you're opening and closing your business and such. And you know what? Why this is such an important question is because the only time this is really addressed is usually during the holiday seasons. We talk about it come Christmas time, Easter, Halloween, big shopping periods.
Right.
That's when these things come up. But the reality of it is there are things that you need to exercise in your day-to-day business that throughout the year can safeguard you.
Such as?
Number one, be very, very cautious about when you're opening and closing, about examining the environment around you, and go with your gut. If it doesn't feel right, contact somebody for assistance. I always tell the public, every store in Carson City, I am committed to it, will assist you if you're a customer and you're leaving the store. So our employees should do the same thing.
Okay.
Be strongly aware of your environment, and if it doesn't feel right, it's not right.
Okay.
Get someone to assist you. Don't create a routine. In other words, every Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock, I load up the cash bag and I walk out the front door and I walk right straight over to the bank. Don't create a routine that makes you a popular victim, if you will. The other thing is always be careful about what you share with other people.
Okay.
Be careful. The folks that in many cases that are going to make you the victim of a crime, they know what your routine is. They know what they're going to get out of the crime, whether it be the person or the money or the merchandise. Be very cautious. It is not wrong. It's not living in fear. It's being aware.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with being aware.
Okay. Thank you for
Thank you.
I think some of us just take our environments for granted.
Yes.
And instead of changing our routine, we fall into habits. And those habits can cost us dearly sometimes.
You'd be surprised how many habits walk through our front door and say, Sheriff, I'm embarrassed. I left my car open. I left my wallet on the dashboard, and now it's all gone.
Yes. We need to take a good look at how we do things, review it, and understand that probably we were the basic cause of what happened to us.
Yes.
All right. Our next guest, please.
Hi, my name is PJ DeGrose, and I'm founder of webofsupport.com, Soldier Adoption Program, and the First Military Wives Club. First of all, to you, I want to say thank you for your service.
Well, thank you.
But beyond that, thank you for personally caring. It's obvious, we all know it in this town, and we appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
All
I
right?
appreciate that.
You take it so personally. You really do. A lot of officers don't. I've lived in a lot of places, so for me, it's a big thing. Sheriff, you know I've done a lot of work with the military, and as you being ex-military, you know that PTSD is real, and it's a very insidious situation we have going on now. In my work with the military, I know of many cases where our men and women soldiers have returned from active combat and have had issues because of the PTSD, where there were arrests involved. What I would like to know is there a program right now, or are you working on a program for officers to recognize PTSD and to deal with these people not as criminals, but understanding that there is a problem with them that's beyond their control?
There absolutely is. We have a twofold approach going right now. Number one, obviously it does focus on the criminal side, the jail environment. It's a forensic assessment team that is assigned to the jail, and it was groundbreaking, worked with Nevada Health Department. We are focusing efforts right there. Second to that is, in fact, right here in this room, in the upcoming weeks, we're broadening out a program called crisis intervention. In other words, yes, the reason I'm here is because somebody called for the police. But the reason this is going on is not a crime. It is a lower level issue that needs to be addressed, and we don't always have to address it as crime. Maybe we just need to get services back to the person who is at risk or in peril at that moment.
Very good. Okay. Thank you very much. It means a lot to me. Thanks.
Thank you.
And you know, before we bring our program to a close, just as PJ was mentioning, you have a real sensitivity for the public that you serve.
Yes.
And it's in your eyes, it's on your face. We are your people. And we just want to say thank you again for taking the time. And I am just overjoyed that you were not called out during the middle of one of these interviews, okay? Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. I appreciated it. It was wonderful. I love the questions. We could do this all night long. Okay. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for tuning us in tonight, and we look forward to a brand new program next week with a brand new guest. This man has set a high standard. It won't be a man next week, okay? All right. Take care. Have a great evening out there.
Thank you.
Good night.